Saints fans and who that's from all over the world. It's time for the Crescent City Connection with Kyle T, Bob Rose, Barry Hurstis, and the Saints News crew.
First and 10, let the story begin. It's football Sunday, the Saints marching in. We went from banging our heads to them calling us ain'ts. Now it's who they say they gon' beat them Saints. First round by, when we made the playoff, everybody hated, cause we get to take the day off. Vince and Boogie, nobody do it better. Now we on our way to our best season ever. Who that? Who that? And the Saints are marching on.
All right, Saints fans and who that's from all over the world. It's Kyle T. Mosley with the Saints News Radio crew, and we are presenting our Crescent City Connection. I am here tonight with Bob Rose from the Canal Street Chronicles himself. Bob, what's going on today?
Not a lot. Another day in paradise. Good evening to you, Kyle. Good evening, all Saints fans out there. I hope everybody's doing great.
Yeah, we are doing well, man. We get the boys back in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome on Sunday to face the Detroit Lions. So it should be a pretty entertaining game between ourselves as well as the Lions. I think it's going to be one of those aerial shows between Drew Brees and Mr. Matthew Stafford, who is the highest paid quarterback in the league. So
I do believe.
Yeah, I do believe. So we shall see how everything transpires. We've had a number of interesting things to happen with the Saints since we last talked. The last time we were on the air was a few weeks ago, and I apologize on my end. We had some personal things going on that we needed to take care of at the home front in Houston, but everything's back. We're back on track to talk about the Saints and what's going on in the Who Dat Nation. Some housekeeping notes. You can always follow us on www.saintsnewsnetwork.com, as well as you can follow us on saintspodcast.com, and that's Saints Podcast with an S.com. That's our new website, sister website, so you can listen to us live there as well as we bring to you the best podcasts in the Who Dat Nation. Also, you can follow us. We have an app on Google Play. You can listen to us there as well as download it for free. And we have our show on TuneIn, so you can go to Alexa and request to hear Saints News Radio through Amazon. And we have a new lineup on iHeartRadio. So we have just debuted last couple weeks on iHeartRadio. So there are multiple ways you can be able to listen to us in the Who Dat Nation here on Saints News Radio and the Crescent City Connection. All right, Bob. The Saints defeated the Miami Dolphins in Wembley Stadium. The Saints are now 2-2. They put on a pretty impressive showing, and beating Carolina. Carolina and Miami. We're now even, but right now we're going to a critical juncture. We played the Detroit Lions, and we're going to go ahead and after that play Mr. Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field. So right now, man, I would have to say this is time for the Saints to prove it or lose it. Wouldn't you say?
Without a doubt. The best phrase that can describe this New Orleans season so far is definitely Jekyll and Hyde. But just like you said, I love the way this team is trending in the right direction over the last 2 weeks. A very impressive victory in Carolina. That's always a tough place for any divisional opponent to play. And followed it up by, frankly, they handled the Dolphins pretty easily. In London. I realized Jay Cutler was the quarterback, so you might want to put an asterisk by that. But the Dolphins still have a lot of talent on that roster, and New Orleans made it look easy that day. So that was a very encouraging way to go into the bye week.
Yeah, very encouraging, as well as very exciting to see what the defense was able to put together with shutting out the Dolphins all in all. And when we look at the Saints and what they have been able to accomplish over the past 2 weekends when they were playing before the bye, you have to say shutting down Cam Newton, as well as being able to effectively push the ball down the field on a very competitive defense like the Carolina Panthers. That was a very encouraging sign there for the New Orleans Saints. But there are still a couple of things that concern me from time to time, and we'll talk a little bit about that with the Saints when you give them your grades for the defense as well as for the offense. But Bob, let me just turn to this right quick. The Saints just traded away Adrian Peterson, man. And when we look at Adrian Peterson, we have Mark Ingram in the backfield, as well as Kamara and the young guy Edmonds. And there's a possibility the Saints may consider bringing back up Daniel Lasco. How do you feel the whole scenario with Adrian Peterson really wound up to letting him go? Was it only just production? Do you think there was something more to it?
I think it was just production. I realized that Peterson and Coach Payton had a pretty talked about blow up in the very first game, the loss against Minnesota on national TV. I personally chalked that up to just two competitors that looked at usage and a game plan slightly differently. We see blow-ups on NFL sidelines every week. So I don't think that Peterson was a problem on the sidelines or in the locker room. The Saints players, after the trade was announced yesterday, the Saints players that spoke out about it all seemed to genuinely appreciate Peterson's time in New Orleans, and I got the feeling that it wasn't just them saying the right things while the cameras were on. I really do think that he was a decent teammate. He didn't have it anymore. He is a 32-year-old running back with tons of tread on the tires, and frankly, I didn't like this signing from the start. I've said that to numerous times, that I worried that he didn't have anything left. And once they got on the field, he pretty much proved exactly that. The guy averaged, I think, about 3 yards a carry. You take out his longest run of 11 yards, he averaged less than 2.5 yards a carry. That's not going to get it done in any offense. Frankly, I think I had the feeling that they were going to release him before the end of the month. That was just my gut instinct and, frankly, my preference. So the fact that we got a 6th-round pick for him and the 2-year contract that New Orleans signed him to, it was more of a team-friendly deal, so it doesn't leave them on the hook for a whole lot of dead cap money, like unfortunately has been the case with this regime with certain signings in the past. I think coming in, looking back on it now, the Saints probably looked at it as a low-risk, high-reward situation. If he had anything left, great. He's a valuable piece to the offense. Since it turned out that he didn't, they gave it a chance. Now they'll turn back to Ingram as the primary ball carrier and incorporate very exciting rookie Alvin Kamara into even more of the game planning. So, wish luck to Adrian, but he was never a great fit into this offense. And at 2-2 right now, there's no real damage done. We can move forward with the pieces we have in place and go from there.
Yeah, and with the emergence of Kamara, man, you really got to embrace what this rookie is going to bring to the team, not just for this season, but for future season, barring he stays healthier, of course, right? As well as, Mark Ingram has been just sitting there like, really? Y'all going to bring in someone else? Really? So I think it's a time where we can really think, well, I would say it like this. It's either Mark Ingram embraced this as being his backfield right now or else, because we know that after this year, there's some uncertainty if the team is going to extend his contract, right? So what are you going to do, Mark? Is it really that time for him to put everything out, lay it out on the field or not? It's really going to be up to him. But as far as the team as a whole, man, I really believe that, like you said, they supported AP. They thought highly of him. You know, he's a future Hall of Famer in my book. And, you know, I just didn't get that good vibe that he was going to be the long-term solution. You know, the team let Hightower go during the offseason, and I think Hightower is still out there on the market, and I always thought Hightower was a good compliment to Mark Ingram, you know, but we have the young Alvin Kamara, who's doing a phenomenal job thus far. Let's just see how everything continues to play out in the backfield. Now, let's look at what's going to happen with Willie Snead coming back into the fold. How do you think that's going to translate into more positiveness for the wide receiving core, or how do you feel that's going to really gel right now for Snead coming off of that hamstring injury as well as his suspension?
Snead is going to be a huge shot in the arm for this entire offense, and most definitely the passing game. Obviously, you have to be very, very concerned over any wide receiver or any skill position player that struggles with a hamstring injury, because those things can be tricky. When they announced that he was going to be a scratch and inactive for the Dolphins game, and then you heard why, you know, that he had tweaked a hamstring a little bit. That gave him an extra 2 weeks because, you know, as everybody knows, we know he's missed the first 3 weeks, so he has yet to see the field in regular season action. The quicker Snead can get back to 100%, the more powerful this offense is going to be. Because let's face facts, we're talking about how excited we are about this team because of the last 2 victories. But if you look really closely at the offense is still pretty limited. Breeze is doing a great job at spreading the ball around like he always has. And Kamara and Michael Thomas, along with a lesser extent Kobe Fleener, have done a nice job. But you got the feeling that this hasn't been the same offensive attack by New Orleans that can pretty much score at will and put yardage up at will. Now with Snead back in the lineup, assuming he gets back to 100%, he's a favorite target of Breeze, particularly on third down. Willie's one of the more underrated number 2 wide receivers in the league, in my opinion. And I know he's fallen just short the last 2 years of a 1,000-yard campaign, but that's because they had a little bit more skill at the wide receiver position, I think. But Snead is basically a 1,000-yard receiver that you're bringing back into the fold. That's big for any team, but especially when you're a favorite target of your Hall of Fame quarterback, that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. Just to be able to know that you have somebody who's reliable, who can catch the football in critical situations like third downs. You know, the Saints are down from being over, 52 or 53% last season on third downs, down to 41.7% this year. Just to have a guy like Snead who could have possibly extended a couple more drives for the New Orleans Saints, I think it's going to be very critical, and I'm excited to see him back on the field, man. We really did need him. I know he had a lot of support from the teammates due to that suspension, but I'm happy to see him back in the fold.
Oh, no doubt about it. And obviously I'm only speaking for myself here, but even the last 2 games against Miami and Carolina, New Orleans had control of both games pretty much the entire way. Yet on offensive possessions on third downs, I just didn't have a whole lot of confidence in anybody outside of Michael Thomas and even Kamara anybody outside of those two to make a play.
Right.
Snead is a consistent playmaker. He's proven himself. This offense should get back to very close to the exciting levels that we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I agree. Let's hear a little bit from Willie Snead with an interview that he did at his locker.
I was rehabbing my hamstring and, just hanging around and trying to stay in the loop of things.
So I thought part of the suspension was that you weren't allowed to be at the facility. Is that different when you're hurt?
Yeah, I believe so. I mean, with my injury being as serious as it was, they wanted me to be on site and being able to rehab and all these things. So I think that was the exception. It was able to work. So.
And then how tough was that you get back but you can't play, right away?
Yeah, that was really tough. I was looking forward to playing in London, and it was just all about being smart at that point and being available for the rest of the year. So it is what it was, and I'm just glad we got the win.
Do you think it'll take some time to kind of get back into the flow of things since you've missed a couple of games, or do you feel like you can just jump right out there and kind of contribute?
I think it's going to take some reps. I'm really confident, with the game plan and how things are going right now. So it's just going to be reps, getting those reps before and after practice, and before once I get a couple game reps, I think I'll be back in the loop of things.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to take some time for him to get back into the flow of the game, but I believe he can be able to do it, Bob. So, Willie Snead back in the fold. What's going to happen to Mr. Tommy Lee?
Tommy Lee might find himself to be an occasional inactive, on game day inactive, depending on what Sean Payton and Pete Carmichael's what they have game planned coming in. Because you have Thomas and now Snead as your unquestioned number 1 and number 2 wideouts. Brandon Coleman is a pretty solid 3 in my opinion, and you have Teddy Ginn on the roster anyway to stretch the field. That's the same skill level that Tommy Lee Lewis brings to the table. You look at the kind of routes that Lewis excels at the most. He excels at stretching the field. He's a pretty fast receiver, and he excels on those short, quick screen passes to get the ball in his hands into the open field. Well, the quick screen passes, they like using Kamara more and more for that from the running back position. Snead has always excelled at that as well. And again, you have Ginn there to stretch the field. So right now, Tommy Lee is still a valuable complementary piece. But he doesn't fit into the week in and week out game planning, again, barring injury, the way the Saints wide receiving core shapes up.
Yeah, and it's kind of the odd man out, so to speak. I believe it was the Miami game. They tried to do one of those bubble screens to him and just went nowhere. Absolutely anywhere. And I think he has been really a non-factor the past 2 games for the Saints. Tommy Lee still like his fire. He's one of those passionate guys, much in the like of how we had Beer Man here. So I like what I see in Tommy Lee. I just don't know right now if he's going to be the fit or the long-term solution for the wide receiving core. Hopefully he can be some sort of a compliment in special teams for us, man. So you will hate to lose his speed altogether, but yeah, I do foresee some inactive games for Tommy Lee. So let's kind of move on from there, man. Let's talk about this defense, and I want to key in on one individual that I think this preseason got a bad rap. And that's Ken Crawley. Okay. And you look at what he's doing now and the way he's performing, coming in, being inactive the first couple of games of the season, and really made his presence felt with the Miami game, especially that critical interception in the end zone. How do you see Ken Crawley right now?
Ken Crawley is balling out. He's played some terrific football in the last 2 weeks. Not just against Miami, like you pointed out, but he did a great job against the bigger receivers of Carolina. Frankly, if I had the power to award out game balls, and in my articles I did award a game ball to Crawley in each of the last 2 games, I was honestly surprised that he was inactive in the first 2 weeks, because I wasn't as hard on Crawley's play in the preseason as some others were, mainly because all reports coming out of training camp were that he was holding up extremely well against Snead, against Michael Thomas, against Brandon Coleman. The Saints, we know, have some good receivers on their roster, and he was playing well against them, and playing pretty well against the scrimmages that they had against the Chargers. And did they scrimmage the Texans too? I forget who else they scrimmaged.
Yeah.
But whomever it was,
did.
Crawley played well.
Right.
He did have a few lapses in the preseason games themselves. I understand why people turned on him quickly, because he was extremely inconsistent last year. But you have to remember, this is a second-year player. He's still learning the NFL cornerback game, and he's going to be a little bit inconsistent. But I love the way he has been aggressive against the opposing wide receivers, and as long as you could see his confidence raising almost with every snap in the last 2 games, and especially against Miami. I realized the quarterback was Cutler, but look at the receivers that they have on that team. They have a pretty good 3-headed monster at wide receiver in Miami, not to mention the tight end Julius Thomas, where Crawley got that end zone interception.
Yeah, that was great.
And he matched up. He matched up well because of how aggressive he was. And as long as he stays aggressive, he fits well into this defense.
You look at that preseason game, I believe it was the one with the Browns where Crawley had, was it back-to-back interference calls, one led to a touchdown. You said it there. He has been aggressive, right? And I remember back when we had my cousin Shane Boyle on, and he was talking how the cornerbacks needed to play their games, right? And having to play their games, being aggressive and not allowing the cushions that you see most of these cornerbacks of today are doing in the National Football League. He really did well in playing his game. If you look at what Pro Football Focus had graded out as, he's the top 5 or top 4 highest graded cornerbacks in the league. And I hate to say who's number 1. Guess who's number 1?
I don't know.
A former Saint. Patrick Robinson.
Former Saint. No way.
Yes. Patrick Robinson. Pro Football Focus has him at 92.6. Jason McCourty is second. Jalen Ramsey is third. And fourth is Ken Crawley at 90.6. Man, that's something else, right? Patrick Robinson, they say, has been having a great first 5 games of the season, man, for the Eagles. Can you believe that?
Well, and I have heard he's been playing well. I haven't been following Philadelphia really closely, but I'm sorry. The Patrick Robinson in my brain will always be the Patrick Robinson in a New Orleans Saints uniform, and I'm okay with the group we have right now. Let's just say that.
I got you, man. Well, look, a lot of praise has been put on Ken Crawley. Now he's going to face Golden Tate. Those young Moore brothers or whatever, and he's going to have some tests going at him, So hopefully we could be able to see how the cornerbacks, Lattimore as well as Crawley, are going to be the tandem of the Saints throughout the rest of the year. Now we have Delvin Breaux, which may be coming back healthy with the next couple of weeks. What will the Saints do if Delvin Breaux comes back into the fold? How do you see that playing out?
Oh my goodness, that's a good problem to have, especially when you compare the current situation to the mess that the team had at cornerback last season. Look, I'm a big Delvin Breaux fan. I have been every year he's been in the league so far. I'm not necessarily going to come down hard on him for his struggles last season because, in my opinion, he came back a little bit too early. Was limited physically, and it showed. But the guy is a warrior. I think the way, assuming he comes back healthy again, he's going to have to work his way and earn the snaps with the way Crawley is playing. I think we can all agree that Lattimore looks like a top-level cornerback right now. And P.J. Williams has been playing extremely well also. To have Breaux in that mix, to have 4 cornerbacks of that caliber, my goodness, I'll take that combination against anybody the way that they're playing. But I don't think Breaux is just going to be given any kind of starting job. I think he's going to have to earn his snaps. So that cornerback crew is going to be extremely competitive with each other. And we've talked about how aggressive Crawley has been, and Lattimore has been very aggressive, especially for a rookie, which you love to see. Those guys are going to continue to challenge each other, and it's going to make the defense as a whole much, much better than what we've seen in recent years.
Yeah. And think about it, man. We have some good young talent now that the Saints are putting on the field. And especially we're going to talk about these rookies, man. But the young talent that I see can really be cornerstones for the future for this team. If you guys would like to chat with Bob Rose as well as myself, it's 504-533-8444. You can call in and give your opinion on the New Orleans Saints. Don't forget to go to www.saintsnewsnetwork.com and read all of the latest from Barry Hurstis, as he is the featured columnist for the Saints News Network. Bob, we need to get you to write a couple of little side pieces there, if we can allow, if Mr. Hendricks can allow you to be broken away from time to time.
I don't know. Mr. Hendricks might be happy to get rid of me for a little bit.
Well, I'll talk to John. He'll be all right. All right, man. Well, look, man, we got to talk about somebody who's really been under the radar the past few years and has had really pretty solid years for the New Orleans Saints, and that's Cam Jordan, our leader on the defensive side. Cam Jordan is right up there as one of the top edge rushers for the season thus far through the first 5 games. Pro Football Focus rated him second to Khalil Mack. They have Khalil Mack at 90.7 and Cam Jordan at 90.4. And it could have been a little bit better than that. I think Cam Jordan went back to his old ways a little bit and missed a couple of sacks. But, we'll talk about that, man. But he had 2 sacks for sure. I know one on Cam Jordan, and he missed another on Mr. Cutler there. But, man, Cam Jordan's been playing well.
Yeah, he has. And he has been, even as abysmal as this defense has been over the last few years, he has been Mr. Consistent. You can always count on production from Mr. Jordan. Cam, I don't know if I would put Cam in the elite pass rusher category that players like Khalil Mack, Von Miller, J.J. Watt. He's probably a notch below that as far as his pass rushing abilities, but he's still a very good pass rusher. And even more important than that, or just as important, is Cam's ability to play the run has always been extremely underrated. Basically, he can hold down that one end spot, and with the Saints' struggles through the rest of the defense, Cam has often had to face double and sometimes even triple teams, and he's still averaging close to double-digit sacks every year, as well as being a force in the run-stopping game. And as this defensive talent around him improves, we're going to actually see Cam Jordan's numbers increase. I know he leads the team in sacks right now with 3. 3 in 4 games. That's certainly puts him. I know it's early on, but it certainly puts him on pace for a potential career high. We've said for the last 2 or 3 years, what do the Saints need defensively? Well, the list has been long, but right near at the top of the list is somebody to complement Jordan's ability to rush the passer, to kind of reduce the number of times that he gets double teamed. Now, he's still a good enough player that most teams are going to double team him the majority of the time anyway. But what we're seeing is a little bit of the complementary that the other guys are stepping up. We know Dennis Allen likes to blitz a lot. And what I noticed against Miami and especially against Carolina is that the blitzes that the team would bring, or the extra pass rushers, would come wherever Jordan was lined up. They would come on the opposite side, which makes a lot of sense because now the offensive protection packages, they have to make a decision. Are they going to slide to provide that extra protection against the blitz? And if so, that will give Jordan more one-on-one opportunities, and I'll take that equation every time. Right. And if they decide to continue to double team and put the extra blocker on Jordan, well, now you're going to have a free blitzer, and that's what we saw against Miami, especially. They put 4 safety packages on the field a couple times, and they got a sack or heavy pressure each time. So Jordan's physical abilities are making a difference. And actually helping these younger guys as well on the field, as well as his leadership off of it.
Do you still feel as though we still need someone to complement him on a consistent basis on the other side?
We certainly need consistency there. Haoli Kikaha has 2 sacks, which is second on the team, and his strength is as a situational pass rusher. And he's gotten some nice pressure on the other side, on the opposite side of Jordan in pass rushing situations. And Alex Okafor, I think Okafor does have a sack on the year, but after really struggling getting to the passer in those first 2 games, he's actually started to push the pocket a lot better in these last 2 victories. I think what we need now. Would it be nice to have an elite pass rusher on the other side? It absolutely would. But that, 2 terrific pass rushers, bookend pass rushers, are a luxury that not many teams have. I think the pieces that they have into place, as long as they can show consistency, that the Saints defense would be better off. And we didn't even mention the rookie Trey Hendrickson, who's still rounding into playing shape, and our favorite inactive every week, Al Muhammad, shows some good pass rushing ability in the preseason. So between those guys, if they can work into a rotation and provide even consistent pressure, that's all we really ask, is just somebody or multiple bodies to provide a little bit of consistency opposite Cam.
Yeah, I agree. I'm still waiting for Muhammad. I believe this may be a good game for him to try to get into and kind of play a little bit from time to time for the Saints. But Hendrickson, the couple of times I've seen him, he did put some pressure on those guys, especially he put some pressure on Cutler as well. So hopefully he can stay healthy and stay on the field as well. Barry Hurstis, welcome to the show, man. How are you doing?
Doing fine, sir, and yourself?
Good. You are here with me as well as Mr. Bob Rose, and we're just talking a little bit about what's going on in the Who Dat Nation. Barry, man, we were talking about the defense and Cam Jordan and his performance, and I was asking Bob if we needed to have somebody to compliment Mr. Jordan, and he shared his thoughts. What are some of your thoughts there?
Oh, well, I would agree 100%. I don't think Alex Okafor is the answer. I think he's a serviceable player, or average, or on par, I guess, whatever terminology you'd like to use. He's not an overwhelmingly great player by any standards. he was a decent signing, but to me, it was on par with the signing they had last year of the guy from Cleveland. I can't remember his name now. they had for the
Kruger.
What's his name? I can't even think of the guy's name now.
You talking about Kruger, right?
No. Oh man, I can't think of his name now. He played for Cleveland. He played for Baltimore before that. I just can't. His name escapes me. Look,
Paul Kruger. Paul Kruger.
Yes, Kruger.
Yeah.
Gave such an underwhelming performance that I couldn't even remember his name. Okay, so that tells you how bad that opposite side of Cam Jordan has been in the last few years. It's just Junior Gillette. Look, we can bash on Junior Gillette all we want, but Junior Gillette could rush the passer. He was very good at at that time anyway. He hasn't done so well with the Redskins now that he's there, but Junior Gillette was a nice compliment to Cam Jordan, and they have yet to successfely replace Junior Gillette ever since they got rid of him. They've tried a handful of guys that none have worked out. Kruger obviously was a bust last year. I like Okafor, but he wasn't setting the world on fire in Arizona, which is one of the reasons why they chose not to re-sign him. So,
right.
That's going to have to be something that they address in the draft. They chose not to address it. They passed on Carl Lawson from Auburn, who I was on the board not only in the late first round when they look, I love the Ramczyk pick. That turned out to be a great pick, so I'm not going to rag on them for passing on Lawson in the first round. I really can't rag on them for passing on them in the second round because Marcus Williams is also an outstanding player. But in that third round, you had Carl Lawson still on the board, and they passed on him not once but twice in the same round. Because you got to remember they traded up to get Kamara, and then they still had two more picks in that round, and they passed on Lawson twice. So, I know hindsight's 20/20, but Carl Lawson, for people who don't know, was an outstanding pass rusher for Auburn University, and he is lighting it up with the Cincinnati Bengals right now as a rookie. And that's a guy who, if you would have picked him and put him on that opposite side, you finally would have had a guy to rush the passer off that opposite side, and he would have been a fantastic compliment to Cam Jordan. But look, hindsight's 20/20, and the Saints did make some great picks. It's, to me, the best draft class. This is the best draft class, I think, second only to the Bum Phillips class of 1981, which is considered the greatest Saints draft class of all time. So I'm not gonna sit here and cherry pick, the picks that they should have did this, they should have did that. I could say I could look at every draft the Saints have ever had and pick spots where they passed on this guy, they passed on that guy. I'm not going to bag on them for that because to me they had an outstanding draft this year. They really did. So, but that's a guy he could have had that I'm disappointed that they passed on. I love the Anzalone kid, and Trey Hendrickson's a nice player, but man, you could have had Carl Lawson at that spot. So anyway, that to me is still an ongoing issue that they need to address going forward. They definitely need somebody else to complement Cam.
Yeah, compared to Hendrickson, and I know he rated very well, and we don't know his future. And like I said earlier, he has been putting some pressure out there on the opposing quarterbacks when he has been given the chance, right? But Muhammad, to me, and I remember when I first saw Junior Gillette, I saw his Temple plays that he made when he was there, when he went to, was it Stillman after that? But
right.
You could see a guy that was aggressive in going after the quarterback. And I see
And
that
raw
same.
talent, raw talent.
And he had raw talent. Remember, it took him a while before he was acclimated into the system, right? So I see the same vein in Muhammad. And Bob, it's been gnawing at me, right? Why don't we just give him a shot? Just make him active one game. Let's just see what happens. What could you hurt? Because you're not getting a consistent performance from anybody else. Why wouldn't we at least try? Especially when we're going to have two mobile quarterbacks that we're going to face in Stafford as well as in Aaron Rodgers the next 2 weeks, right? So I think this is a perfect game to at least activate the kid. Why not?
Yeah, I'd completely agree with that. The Detroit offensive line has had a heck of a time trying to protect Matt Stafford, and actually he hurt an ankle in their game last week against Carolina. He's going to play against New Orleans, but you wonder if he's going to be as mobile as he normally is. So now you have a more stationary target in with an offensive line that has not protected the quarterback well. This game, more than anything else, especially with recent history of success that the Lions passing game has had against New Orleans, you have to get pressure on Stafford. You have to hit him. You have to get him on the ground a couple of times, and you definitely have to hurry him. And even though they have been going with that rotation of Okafor, Kikaha on some snaps, and Hendrickson, I would certainly activate Muhammad for this game. I'll play devil's advocate a little bit with Muhammad. The game against Carolina. Carolina has a pretty intricate rushing attack, and we know that Muhammad did. If he had any struggles, it was he got out of position at times in the running game during the preseason. So looking back, I can understand, I think, why they didn't activate him against Carolina. But Miami, New England, Minnesota, they lost the New England and Minnesota games because they couldn't pressure the passer. That was the number one reason why. And Miami, the defense played extremely well, as we know. But again, you were talking about an offensive line that was struggling to protect the passer and a very stationary quarterback in Jay Cutler. I didn't understand why Muhammad was not active that game either. If they like the kid, and the kid certainly played well in the preseason, they like the kid to keep him on the active roster to not let him get into somebody else's hands, which was a very smart decision. I'd just like to hear from them why they're picking, say, Hendrickson to be active over Muhammad. That's it. I'd just like to hear the coach's reasons why. That's all.
Yeah, and we have to give it to Hendrickson in the Carolina game. He did sack Cam Newton, and he did force a fumble. So, well, we'll see, man. We have some talent, and it's a good thing, like you guys said. The more talent you can have, the more debates like this we can open up. So let's kind of push on, guys. And Barry, you weren't here earlier, but we were talking about Willie Snead coming back to the fold. I just quickly want to get your view on that. What's your thoughts on Willie Snead?
Well, I think he's going to add that dimension that's been missing from the offense. I mean, he's your primary slot, what you call a designated slot receiver. And he's Drew Brees' his go-to guy on third down. When you get in that critical 3rd and 5, 3rd and 4, whatever type of situation, when you've got to convert and got to get that first down, and your slot receiver is usually that guy that you're eyeballing on that type of a play call or a situation, and that's his guy. Look, credit, Breeze and Sean Payton and the offensive coordinator. I can't even think of his name.
Carmichael.
Look, the Alzheimer's is strong on me tonight. So I apologize.
You talk about Pete Carmichael.
I turned 50 here in 2 weeks, so
that's
it's
okay,
on me right
man.
now.
That's okay. I'll send you some Geritol.
But adjustment would Snead be, and they knew he was going to be out. They knew they kept it under the rug from the public and from the media, obviously, but they knew they were going to lose him for, they knew that the NFL was probably going to suspend him. So they've been preparing for this all summer long. And, the offense kind of struggled there in those first two games, but they've looked better. You basically got a 6'6" guy playing slot. I mean, you can't help it. You have some success there. So, and I'm talking about Brandon Coleman, who's done an admirable job filling in for Snead, kind of stepping up into that role basically, and has done a nice job. So, and has solidified his roster spot as a result. So, but he'll add that dimension back to the offense that they've been missing. So I'm glad to see him coming back, and hopefully, as I alluded to in my one article this morning, hopefully he'll get back into the flow of things, and we'll see where he's at. But that said, I don't know if you guys have even touched on it yet, and I'm alluding to the Adrian Peterson trade. But by trading Peterson, you've now freed up your offense now, because now you don't have to worry about forcing this guy into a scheme who never fit the scheme to start with. To me, was a bad signing. I still have never got the logic behind the signing, or what they. I understand what they were trying to do. They want to take some pressure off of Breeze, give Ingram maybe a breather, and you could almost set it up to where you had the 2009 Super Bowl team that year, where you had Mike Bell and J.R. Thomas and Reggie, you had all those guys, and they all had specific roles. And I think that's what they were envisioning. But Adrian Peterson is not a guy who is going to be relegated to a role. He wants to be the main dog. He wants to pound the rock like he's always done. That's what he's always done, and he's a guy who wants to be a backup running back. That was never his desire. I don't even know why he took. I guess because maybe no other team in free agency really wanted him. No other team really was going out of their way to sign him, and the Saints were the only team to show any interest. So or any serious interest anyway. And so I think it was kind of a forced marriage, so to speak, if you want to use that analogy, and it just never worked out. And so now the Saints can be themselves again, because they weren't themselves. They were trying to be something that they weren't. And Sean Payton, of course, was going to, he didn't care. He knew what he has in Kamara, and there was no way he was going to let that slip out of his hands and give Peterson 20 carries a game. That was never going to happen. He wasn't going to, and I believe that's what that whole argument that you saw, or that whole little exchange that you saw on the sideline in that Minnesota game in Week 1. I think that's what that was all about. Because that was Peterson saying, "Hey man, you gotta give me some love," and Sean Payton said, "Oh no." We're not gonna go that route. We're gonna do it my way, or we just won't do it at all. And so look, it works out great. Now he goes to Arizona, who has the worst running game in the NFL. So it's a great situation for Adrian Peterson. Now he gets the opportunity to do what he wants, which is to prove to the world that he still can be an alpha dog, so to speak, at the running back position. We wish him the best of luck. It didn't work out. Hey, that's what. Sorry that you got $82.8 million this year, but look, Saints keep trying to bring in these veteran players that they think are going to put them over the top, and they never do. And so Peterson's just one more guy that you can add to the list of Champ Baileys and Brandon Browners and all those type of guys who just never, C.J. Spillers, that just never worked out, when they came here. And it is what it is. But now they could be who they really are. And now you can let Ingram be your primary, power back, and you can just take Kamara and turn that kid loose, brother, because, look, he's the real deal. He's every bit of the player that a Reggie Bush or a Darren Sproles was, and he's only a rookie. He's only going to get better and better as time goes on. And look, that's what has me excited. Between Kamara and Michael Thomas, now you got a stud number one wide receiver. Michael Thomas, to me, is one of the best young receivers in the NFL, hands down. And you got him. If you just sneak back and sneak and keep his head on right, you got a great possession / slot receiver in Snead. We still got a kid in Coleman who's got all the potential in the world, who could really be a breakout star if he ever reaches his potential. And now you got a solid running game between Ingram and Kamara. And don't forget, Kamara can be a primary lead running back. You got him in that the Joker role, or the stack back role, so to speak. But that kid could be a number one running back if he has to be. He can lower his shoulder and run people over. Don't make that mistake. So, look, I like what the Saints are doing on offense. It's the defense. It's always been about the defense, and it will continue to be about the defense. So, I'm very excited by what the defense has shown the last 2 weeks. But, again, Jay Cutler ain't setting the world on fire, brother. But you're going to find out in these next 2 games. I know Stafford is hobbled, and we'll see how that works out this week. But, man, you got to go into Lambeau Field next week and play Aaron Rodgers. That ain't going to be no Sunday picnic right there, brother. So we'll see what happens. But, I'm encouraged by how this team looks, and we'll find out a lot about the New Orleans Saints in these next 2 weeks.
Yeah, and that's why I believe this is a critical game, guys. The Saints is either show up and prove it right here in front of your home crowd that we can go 3-2. Because if the Saints lose this game, going up to Lambeau Field, like you say, it's not a cakewalk by no means. Yeah. And you playing a confident Packers team and a very confident quarterback. And you just saw it in his eyes on the sidelines when they gave him over a minute to drive that team down the field against the Cowboys last week. You just knew how the story was going to end, right? Mm-hmm. So this team has to be able to show up and at least go 3-2. And if we lose in Green Bay, we're still back to 3-3. And I think really Green Bay's defense still is kind of iffy, but the Saints are going to have to play a very outstanding game in all of their phases against Green Bay if they're able to come across with a win. But first, we have the Detroit Lions coming into the Mercedes-Benz Superdome on Sunday. So let me just get a quick analysis here from you two gentlemen. Bob, you talked a little bit about Stafford. I know his big target is Golden Tate. Tate last week, the Cowboys pretty much who did they play last week? Carolina pretty much shut him down the first half. Then he kind of ramped it up the second half of the game. When you look at any other weapons that the Lions have other than that big tight end, who else can we be able to say Saints defense needs to key on? Who?
Theo Riddick. Theo Riddick has tortured the Saints in the last couple of meetings. He's a running back by title only. He's really a third down and a pass catching specialist. But that's where he excels for Detroit. And actually, he's second on the team. Theo is behind Golden Tate in receptions. He has 18 or 19 receptions on the year. And where his strength lies is where the Saints defense is still, in my opinion, the weakest. And that is those intermediate routes where the linebacking core still has not progressed. The defensive line has made strides. We've talked about that. We've all three of us have talked about how impressive the secondary has been, especially over the last 2 games rather. But in my opinion, the linebacking core still struggles. Still needs to come together as a unit. And with Anzalone out now, Theo Riddick scares me on this Detroit offense. And he can keep the chains moving. He's going to be a trusted Stafford target. And if they don't lock him down, I'm not sure that the Saints' pressure is going to be able to get to Stafford quick enough. Theo Riddick is a guy that could put up 8-10 receptions, and like I said, just keep those chains moving. Another weapon, you mentioned Eric Ebron, Kyle, and the Saints have struggled from time to time against tight ends. But another weapon that Detroit has at wide receiver is Marvin Jones. Jones had darn near 1,000 yards receiving last year, a little bit over 900. He's gotten off to a slow start this year, but he is, has game-breaking potential. That if the Saints cornerbacks are left in one-on-one coverage, he's not going to be an easy guy to cover all day long. He's a potential playmaker as well. So they're somewhat limited, very limited. Detroit is in the running game, but this is one of the few teams in the NFL that you can, if you make them one-dimensional and make Matt Stafford throw the ball on every down, they could still potentially beat you. He is that good, and Riddick, Golden Tate, and Marvin Jones are that good in the receiving game that they could beat you.
Yeah. You look at their past opponents. The first game against the Cardinals, they won. They beat the Giants. Well, Giants, they are just the Giants this year. But they lost against the Atlanta Falcons. Questionable loss there. It was real close. The game against Minnesota wasn't lighting it up against those guys. They had Keenan in at quarterback at that time, and then this close loss against the Carolina Panthers. They came back in the game. They had a chance if their defense did let them down and let Carolina convert those third downs. So, Barry, when you look at the defense, and the Saints are going to play some pretty aggressive guys on that Detroit front seven, who should we be looking at and keying on as far as the protection for Drew Brees?
Tahir Whitehead, the defensive end / outside linebacker for the Detroit Lions, is to me one of the outstanding pass rushers in the NFL right now. He's very underrated. I guess because he played in Detroit, and you don't really think of the Lions, as far as their pass rush. I mean, Ndamukong Suh and is in Miami now, and of course they always had Nick Fairley, who went to the Rams and then was here for us with the Saints, and is of course out now. But you never really considered them much of a pass rushing team, as far as having a great pass rush. But man, Tahir Whitehead having a phenomenal season right now. And so to me, that would be the guy as far as the Saints keying in on somebody. I'm not really sure who's going to be matched up with him. Maybe Bob has an idea. It might be Armstead, maybe. I'm not really sure. Or I don't. Ramczak's going to be on the other side now. So, assuming Armstead starts, that will be a matchup to watch. Which would be Teron Armstead and Tahir Whitehead going 1-on-1. So that would be a phenomenal matchup, and what a good test for Armstead right off the bat to see how he looks, because Tahir Whitehead to me is probably one of the most underrated defenders in the entire league right now. So that would be the guy I'd fear. Also, remember they have the kid Jared Davis from the University of Florida, a rookie. He's having an outstanding rookie season so far. The Detroit beat writers are pretty high on him and the contributions he's made so far. They have a very underrated defense. They lead the NFL in takeaways. They have 8 takeaways, which leads the league. They're second overall, I believe, in turnover and takeaway ratio. I think Buffalo is first, maybe. So So they live and die by the turnovers, because in 2 games they've lost, last week being a prime example, they either had no takeaways, or they gave the ball away more than they took it away. I believe in that other game they lost. So, but in all 3 of their wins, they're on the plus side. And when I say 3 or 4 takeaways per game in their wins, so this game I believe will be decided by turnovers. And as we know, the Saints have yet to turn the ball over this year on offense. They're perfect so far. 4 games into the season, they have not turned the ball over once, which is very unusual for a Saints team, no matter how good they've been in years, in 51 years. So, it's been a very impressive start in that regard. And I believe this game will definitely be decided on who turns the ball over and who doesn't. It's going to come. These are evenly matched teams in a sense. I mean, the Saints maybe had the more. You'd probably say maybe the more. I don't know if I want to go and say they're more dynamic offensively. They have a lot of similarities. Honestly, Stafford is just a younger and physically bigger version of Drew Brees. But you got, you have Michael Thomas, who's a stud. Well, you can say the same thing about Marvin Jones. Maybe not as a dynamic player as Michael Thomas is, but Marvin Jones is, pretty much the same size, and it's, talented guy. Then you got, a Golden Tate. If there's any one advantage that the Saints would have, if you were comparing the 2 offenses, it definitely would be that Kamara is the more dynamic running back than Theo Riddick, and Mark Ingram to me is head and shoulders better than Amir Abdullah, the primary back right now for Detroit. So defensively, I would probably give Detroit a slight edge, just because I don't think the Saints are they're still trying to find out their identity, so to speak, on defense. We see the potential. The potential is off the charts. Marshawn Lattimore is going to be a lockdown cornerback in the NFL. There's no question about it. He's going to be phenomenal. I wouldn't even be surprised our good friend Delvin Breaux might get pushed out of the cornerback starting rotation by Lattimore.
We kind of talked about that early. We talked about that a little bit early before you came on, man. Bob said the same thing.
I think Delvin Breaux might become the slot corner. I know that sounds crazy, but to some people, but that's what's going to happen, because you could put Lattimore on one outside corner, and I know the Saints have been talking about using Lattimore slot, but I think you use him where he fits best. You put him on the outside, and then you either put Crawley, who's man, what can you say about Kent Crawley? I mean, that kid is having a phenomenal, for an undrafted rookie to be doing what he's done. And look, give that kid a lot of credit. He got burnt, torched a couple of times last year, and instead of letting it get him down and letting it affect his mental state or his career, he just took it in stride, learned from it, and has come back in year 2 and just doing great things. So, you've got to like the Saints secondary. Marcus Williams is going to be another. I mean, he might be an all-pro safety one day. I mean, so they're just got so much talent in that secondary. It all comes down to me to what we talked about earlier: a lack of a pass rush opposite Cam Jordan and the linebackers. I mean, you got some solid guys at linebacker. AJ Klein is a solid guy. Craig Robertson, solid guy. But what you don't have at linebacker is that dynamic player,
right?
That guy who just is a disruptive force.
There you
just
go.
Dominate games. And we all remember the old Dome Patrol, and we remember what a guy like Ricky Jackson, a guy like Pat Swilling, or even your inside guys like Vaughn and
Johnson,
Sam Mills,
yeah.
who of course is going to have a movie coming out tomorrow night, I believe, after the game on the NFL Network. So Saints fans need to watch that. But guys like that who could just take over a game. There's nobody. I love AJ Klein. I love Craig Robertson and some of the things they do. I love the Angeloni kid when he's healthy. But you don't have that one guy that's just a dynamic game changer at linebacker. And to me, that's where the Saints still lack. And Bob alluded to it when he was giving that rundown earlier. And I totally agree with him. That's where they lack. That, if there's any weakness of the Saints defense that you could just point to besides the lack of a pass rush opposite Jordan, which is the obvious one, then it's linebacker. Like I said, they're solid, but they're not spectacular. And the teams in the NFL that win consistently, with the exception of the Patriots, because they just keep doing it with smoke and mirrors every year. But you look at Denver, for example, obviously got Von Miller, right? Oakland got Khalil Mack. So the defenses that have that one guy that's a game changer, well, that's what the Saints don't have right now. They need a guy that's a game changer.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was about to say that right there. I used to always call Malcolm Jenkins the game changer. When we interviewed, I say, Malcolm, you are a game changer. And we need game changers on our defense. And for years, the Saints have overlooked game changers to be very conservative in their draft picks. So I agree.
And I just alluded to it. You just passed on one, Carl Lawson. But it is what it is.
It is what it is. All right, guys, let's kind of wrap up the show and kind of melt it down a little bit. Remy Jones, I see you in the queue. What's going on, Rem?
Hey, guys. Just been sitting here listening to y'all for the past 20 minutes or so, man. And I like what you guys have to say. It basically was echoing everything that's been in my mind. So y'all didn't need me today.
No, we always need you, Professor.
Come on, Remy. We
always need you, my man.
You got to hold us together.
The thing with Rem, man, is that even though he went to St. Aug, he's all right. But
That's so funny for a while, Eagle.
Well, Rem, what's the tone down there in the Big Easy, man? How do the Saints fans feel about what's going to happen on Sunday against the Detroit Lions?
Oh man, the Saints fans are happy, but as a lot of y'all alluded to, these were not. These two teams they beat were not as good as the two teams that they lost to. So that's what everybody's, a little bit cautious about. It's kind of mellow here. We're glad that we're not 0-4 as we have been in recent years. 2-2 at the bye is better than what we've experienced in the past few years. But at the same time, everybody's like cautious about how they feel. Personally, though, I will say this: though I do agree that the two teams that we won against were not as good as the two teams we lost against. I'll also say they played much better than they did against the first two teams. And, so if they had played like they played these last two games, the first two games, we might have even squeezed one of them out of there. Or it would have been competitive, So they played much better football those last two games, regardless of the level of competition. They played better football.
That is true. They did play better football. The defense was better. But one thing that still concerns me, guys, the offense is not fully clicking on all cylinders. And hopefully we can see a change, and we must see a change because we have two highly competitive teams from the NFC North that we will be facing.
Yeah, well, just to touch on that for a second, I think you're going to see it this week because, again, I think the Adrian Peterson trade, I can't understate it enough. What you've done now is you've essentially broken the chains that bind you, so to speak, because the Saints literally were trying to be something that they weren't to accommodate this guy. And look, I love Adrian Peterson. He's going to be a Hall of Fame. And he deserves all the props that you could ever give him, right? So this is not a bash on Adrian Peterson, but he just did not fit, and you can't force. Can't take a square peg and put it in a round hole. You just can't do it, and that's what the Saints were trying to do. And I really think they were again, they were trying to accommodate him, and they were something that you weren't, and you're going to see the real Saints offense. I think you're going to see Sean just cut it loose. Now, will that make a difference? Who knows? But I just think you're going to see the Saints just let it all hang out. Hopefully, on offense, and we'll see the real Saints that were up in the stands. Need back. You can just let Ingram and Kamara do their natural thing without them, having on the eggshells around Peterson's ego and all this type of stuff. Now you can just do what you do. Do what you do. And again, as we seem to say every single week or every single year, it's going to be about the defense. I like the fact that they're playing a quarterback who's banged up. Stafford can still beat you regardless, but he's a little banged up, and this would be a week. The Saints have gotten 8 sacks in the last 2 weeks. This would be the week to blitz him as much as he can. Right. He might get you once or twice for a score, but man, if you get in his head and just bring the heat. I mean, look, this guy has taken 12 sacks and 14 quarterback hits in the last 2 weeks. They've been pounding this guy. That's how bad Detroit's offensive line is this year. So
right.
if you could just get half of that type of pressure on him in this game, he's gonna have it on his mind, and you're gonna force him into maybe making some mistakes, and that could be the difference in this game. Again, I think it's going to come down to turnovers. Detroit lives and dies by it. The Saints haven't committed any. So, whoever gets the most or commits the least amount of turnovers is going to win this football game. I believe it's going to be that simple. But, again, Kyle, you nailed it on the head, man. You nailed it when you said, got to win this game. Because if you lose this game, and then you got to go into Lambeau Field, you're looking at a 2-4 record. And if they're 2-4 after they leave Green Bay, you can wrap it up, brother, because they're not coming back from that. They have got to win this game this Sunday.
Okay, good stuff, guys. Well, hey, I appreciate everything. Let's kind of go through a final wrap-up. Remy, how do you see the Saints prevailing through this, or do you see the Saints going down on Sunday?
No, they're going to win this one, I think, man. I have a good feeling about them this week. I can't speak for the rest of the season, but I really think that with the momentum they took it to the bye week and the being at home with the fans, with the enthusiasm, I really expect them to win this one. And I'm talking like maybe a good 10-point win.
All right, good stuff. Bob, how do you see this one?
I agree with Barry. This is and Remy, it is such a key game for these guys. Young team, they're coming off of a bit of upswing and momentum. I'm very interested to see how they ride it, and can't wait to see how aggressively they come out in the beginning of the game, and that'll be the telltale sign. We're looking at 2 quarterbacks that are absolute warriors and very proficient performers. And Breeze, obviously, and but also Matt Stafford. I can see both quarterbacks throwing for well over 300 yards against a couple of defenses that have surrendered a lot of passing yards. But both defenses are aggressive as well. I know neither Detroit or New Orleans has turned the ball over. New Orleans not at all, and Detroit has only a couple turnovers so far this game. I could see a fairly low-scoring game in the 20s, with a lot of yards from both teams, but we're going to see a couple of turnovers. When they happen and how either team takes advantage of it is obviously going to be the key to the game. I'm going to go with the Saints 28-21 in this one. I think they're finally going to reestablish some home field advantage here. They need to. This might be the game of the season, of a very short season so far, but when looking back at the 2017 season, this is probably going to be the game that we'll say, you know what, they really rode momentum from here, or this is when the season started to unravel. So this is key.
Yeah, good stuff. And Barry, I know you were talking about the defense of the Lions. There's a young man named Zettel And we cannot forget this guy because the Saints wanted him a few years ago, Ansah. Both of those guys have 4 sacks apiece from the Lions. Barry, so how do you see this game?
Well, first, spoiler alert for anybody who goes on to the Saints News Network website. Those bold predictions I do are for entertainment purposes only. So don't ever read anything. I know I saw one of the persons this morning after it was published comment and say, well, that's some wild scenarios you got in there, and I had to explain, that's the whole point. Those articles are not intended, those bold prediction articles are not intended to be my actual analysis of the game. It's for entertainment. Because I like to entertain our readers every once in a while. I like to give some good, credible information, but I also like to entertain. That's part of the fun. That's what makes writing fun, or otherwise I wouldn't be doing this. So, but that said, I don't think it's going to be a shootout as I predicted in the article. But what I do think is going to happen, pretty much Bob, really stole my thunder because he laid it out perfectly. I agree. I think it's going to be, again, as I alluded to previously, it's going to come down to turnovers. I just feel like the Saints have a little momentum on their side. I just think you got the home crowd. This is a game, again, and I can't emphasize this enough. And Bob and Kyle, you, Remy, we've all said it, and I'll just say, to make it ad nauseum, just to shove it down our listeners' throats. This is a game you have to win. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about it. You have got to win this game. And Bob elegantly stated, when you look back at the 2017 New Orleans Saints schedule, a year from now, 10 years from now, whatever happens, we'll find out in the next few months from now, but this is going to be the game where you say, well, this is what made him or broke him, because, like I said, if you lose this game and you're going to go play Aaron Rodgers in Lambeau Field, brother, unless you just get the wildest upset in the history of the NFL next week, you're not going to come out of Lambeau Field other than 2-4. And if this Saints team is 2-4 after 6 weeks, you can wrap it up because it ain't going to happen. So they have got to win this game, because if you can come out of Lambeau 3-3, you're not in bad shape. Because then you look at that Chicago, Tampa, Buffalo, Washington, the Rams, the Panthers again at home, who you beat them in Charlotte. Now you got them at home. The Falcons, you got to play them twice. If you split the Falcons, and you got the Jets and Tampa again. Look, that's at least, by my estimation, 6 to 7 winnable games the rest of the way. So if you can come out of Lambeau Field 3-3, the playoffs is not far-fetched. So this is why Sunday is so important. You have got to win this game, because you cannot come out of Lambeau Field 2-4 or your season's done. It's that simple.
Yeah. And I think also a win will help them with their confidence going into Lambeau as well. If you come in, as the professor would have said, the Saints have a propensity for underachieving in games like this. But this is a time to prove it. Just like my wife said on our wedding night, it's time to prove it or you lose it. So this is the time that these guys got to come in and prove it. Because if they go 3-3, let's just say 3-3, and then you head into, like you said, the Bears, Bucks, Bills, Redskins, and Rams, you're looking at a good 4 or 5 wins right there, right? So if you go 3-3, come away with 4 more wins, man, you're looking at what? 3-3 plus add 1 is 7-3. You're looking good. You're looking good.
Look, if you're 7-4 going into that first Falcons game, and look, you don't have to sweep the Falcons. But you got to split.
Right.
You can't get swept by the Falcons. To me, if we talk about keys to the season, besides obviously this game Sunday, the other key will be later will be later down the line when you play your Falcons twice in 3 weeks. You have got to split that. If you get swept by the Falcons again, then that could potentially kill, any shot at the playoffs down at the end of the season. So this game Sunday, and then playing Atlanta 2 out of 3 weeks, and you got the Jets sandwiched in between that. So you got to split Atlanta, beat the Jets, and that little stretch down there at the end. Look, playoffs is not. I don't want to do the Jim Mora thing, but playoffs is not. It's not out of the question for this football team if they play like they played in the last 2 games.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Okay, guys. Good stuff. Bob, how can the people follow you on Twitter and social media?
My personal Twitter account is at BobbyR2613. And I do currently write for John Hendricks and the Canal Street Chronicles. Canal Street Chronicles has a Facebook page that you could follow. My articles also pop up. We put them on the Saints News Network, also with a great Facebook page. We'd love for you to follow as well. Canal Street Chronicles can also be followed on Twitter at SaintsCSC. We're kind of one big family, as you guys know, and Kyle, Barry, Remy, I thank you so much again for welcoming me into your family. It's an honor to be a part of your show, part of your articles, and everything like that.
Hey, man, you are family. You can't get rid of us now. We're like a bad disease. So, all right. Remy, my man, anything special going on in the Who Dat Nation this weekend we need to know other than St. Aug St. Aug playing or something? Okay, Remy is gone. So, Barry, how can the people follow you?
Okay, well, on Facebook, you can just look me up on my name, Barry Hurstis, if you want. I don't turn away anybody, so I'll talk to you on Facebook. And, of course, on Twitter, you can find me at Barry Hurstis. It's spelled Hirsstius. And, of course, you can always find me also at Saints News, which, of course, is our Twitter site for our Twitter handle for the Saints News Network. And, of course, you can always find my articles on SaintsNewsNetwork.com. And I'll certain to have an article out tomorrow morning. I usually have one out every morning. Sometimes I might take a day off here or there, but in the regular season, you will see an article every single morning. I don't know what tomorrow's article is about yet because I have no idea. I usually don't have an idea until I wake up and brew a pot of coffee. So, but there will be one on the site tomorrow morning, fresh content every single morning at SaintsNewsNetwork.com.
And if you're listening and if you have a interest in writing for the Saints, Barry is interviewing people right now to bring on as fresh new writers under his tutelage. So you can always be able to email him at what?
HurstisBarry@yahoo.com. And if you're interested in writing, if you're a Saints fan who would like to try your hand at writing, or you just think that blogging, as we refer to it in the business, or sports writing, because I still consider myself a sports writer and not a blogger, but it's the same thing basically. If you're interested in writing about the New Orleans Saints, hey, drop me a line, HurstisBarry@yahoo.com, and I will openly embrace anybody who inquires. I've even spoke to one young man a few weeks ago, and I haven't heard back. But look, that opportunity is always there, and of course, I'm still trying to get Bob Rose to slide in to a spot as well. But he's busy. He's got a brand new baby boy who we need to congratulate Bob on that. Gorgeous young son.
Beautiful young guy.
Well, how old is he now, Bob?
3 months old yesterday.
Oh, wow.
3 months old. Cute as a button, man.
Man,
so,
he has that smile.
He's a little bit preoccupied.
Yeah,
right now.
Well,
and his teenage daughters and writing for John Hendricks at Canal Street Chronicles. But I'm going to get him over to Saints News Network one of these days. You can believe that.
Yeah. We'll work out something, man. Bob, I can tell you this, man. Your son has that killer smile, man. The lady's going to have to watch out years from now.
Oh, man. Yeah, you're going to be styling and profiling for a long time,
yes,
bro.
sir, boy. I know.
Oh, guys, he's already a flirt with the ladies. If there's a girl in his vicinity, he just flashes this big, wide open grin and kind of cocks his head to the side. I'm like, oh my goodness, if I had that kind of game when I was younger, wow.
Man, I tell you, it doesn't stop. Look, we took Kyle to Jamaica when he was 1, and we were at an all-inclusive, right, for a wedding. Every morning, those waitresses, he had like 2 or 3 waiting on him. And they were like, no, I would wait for Kyle. Kyle, man, what do you want, man? And he's like, he can't even speak. What are you talking about? What does he want? And they were just like all on him. I'm like, oh my goodness. But hey, man, just watch out. I'm telling you, I see some great things in that young man. Drew Brees is at 1,135 yards. Matthew Stafford is at 1,117 yards for the season. But Drew has only thrown for 4 games. Matthew Stafford 5 games. Drew Brees may be on his way again for another 5,000 yarder. But more importantly, the New Orleans Saints need to have wins under the belt. It's good to have the stats, but the wins mean a whole lot more for your career. So let's see if the Who Dat Nation will be rocking. We need to have the New Orleans Saints to go into the Mercedes Superdome and not only show up, but to show out for the home crowd. So you can follow us on www.saintsnews.net 24/7 with all the Saints news from around the Who Dat Nation, as well as you can go to our new www.saintspodcast.com. You can listen to this podcast as well as all of the other podcasts and video blogs out there in the Who Dat Nation as well. And you can follow Barry Hurstis at www.saintsnewsnetwork.com. This is Kyle T. Mosley. Don't forget, check us out on Twitter at Saints News, Facebook at Saints News, Instagram at Saints News as well. Click us, follow us, and we will give it to you. Saints fans, let's root for our boys in black and gold. Let's stand up and be there in the Superdome and cheer for these guys so they can bring it home with the W. This is Kyle T. Mosley of Saints News Radio as well as the Crescent City Connection. Thank you, and you guys have a great night. Take care. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Good night.